The emergency alert pierced through the quiet hum of Helios Station's medical bay, its harsh tone jolting Dr. Sarah Chen from her research notes. Her neural implant immediately displayed the alert details. Deck 7, Section C. Unknown energy-based life form. Critical condition. The message ended with a red warning label. Approach with extreme caution. Evacuation protocols in effect. Sarah's fingers danced across her holographic interface, pulling up more details. The readings were unlike anything she'd seen in her 15 years as a xenobiologist. Massive energy fluctuations, impossible quantum states, and biological markers that seemed to defy the laws of physics themselves. Dr. Chen. Station Director Harrison's stern voice came through her comm. Clear the medical bay immediately. The entity's energy signature is destabilizing. We're evacuating all non-essential personnel. Sarah's eyes remained fixed on the readings. With respect, Director, if this being is what I think it is, we're looking at a voidborn. They're not just energy-based. They're sentient quantum matrices. Nobody's ever had the chance to study one up close, let alone treat one. Exactly why we can't risk. She cut him off. And they're dying. Look at these patterns. Their quantum coherence is breaking down. We have maybe 20 minutes before total neural collapse. Dr. Chen, that's in order. The safety protocols. Sarah was already moving, grabbing her modified medical kit. Were written by people who never met a voidborn. On going in. She disconnected her comm before Harrison could respond. The corridors of Deck 7 were eerily empty, emergency lighting casting long shadows as Sarah ran. Her neural implant kept updating with increasingly alarming readings. The voidborn's energy signature was becoming more erratic by the second. As she approached Section C, the air itself seemed to crackle with invisible energy. She found them floating in the center of an empty cargo bay, a beam of pure light and energy, their form shifting between states like a living aurora. Their normal iridescent glow had dulled to a sickly pale blue, with dark patches that seemed to absorb light itself. Sarah's instruments screamed warnings about radiation levels and quantum instabilities. "I'm Dr. Sarah Chen," she called out, taking a careful step forward. "I'm here to help." The beam's form flickered, and a voice resonated directly in Sarah's mind, weak but clear. "You should not be here. The others, they were right to run. I am breaking apart." "I'm not running anywhere," Sarah replied, setting up her equipment. "What's your name?" Another flicker. "In your language, closest would be Astra. My research ship, quantum drive malfunction. Barely made it to your station." Sarah's modified scanner confirmed her fears. Astra's quantum matrix was deteriorating, their very consciousness beginning to fragment. But the patterns, there was something familiar about them. Something that reminded her of human neural patterns, just operating on a quantum level instead of biochemical. "Astra, I think I can help, but I'll need to try something that's never been done before. It's going to involve directly interfacing with your quantum matrix using modified human medical technology." "The risk." "I understand risk." Astra's mental voice wavered. "But why help? Others feared contamination. Called me quantum plague." Sarah smiled as she calibrated her equipment. "Humans have a bit of a reputation for doing the impossible. Besides, my grandmother used to tell me stories about being the only doctor willing to treat AIDS patients back in the 2040s. Said someone had to be first. Someone had to care." She looked directly at Astra's flickering form. "I guess caring runs in the family." The next 15 minutes were a desperate race against time. Sarah used every trick she'd learned in her career, every piece of modified equipment she'd developed in her research. She routed power from her own neural implant, using it as a bridge to help stabilize Astra's quantum patterns. The pain was immediate and intense, like having lightning strike directly into her brain. But she pushed through it. "Your neural patterns," Astra observed, their voice stronger now. "They resonate." "How?" "Human consciousness." Sarah managed through gritted teeth. isn't so different from yours. We're all just patterns in the end. Yours are quantum, ours are electrochemical, but the underlying structure. She made another adjustment, and some of the pain subsided. There, your matrix is starting to stabilize. Impossible. Astra's form brightened slightly. No organic being has ever comprehended our nature, let alone found a way to interface. First time for everything. Sarah checked her readings. Though I have to admit, this is going to make one hell of a research paper. Assuming Director Harrison doesn't fire me first. As if on cue, the cargo bay doors slid open. Director Harrison stood there with a security team, all wearing quantum shielding. He took in the scene. Sarah's medical equipment interfaced with her neural implant, creating a stable bridge to Astra's now steadying form. Dr. Chen. His voice was a mixture of anger and awe. You violated at least 15 safety protocols, endangered the entire station. And, he paused, looking at her readings, may have just made first practical contact with a Voidborn. Do you have any idea what you've done? Sarah smiled, though the effort made her head pound. Created a diplomatic incident. Advanced xenomedicine by about 50 years. Prove humans can interface with quantum-based life forms. Her vision began to blur. Though right now, I'd settle for some pain medication and a very long nap. As medical teams finally began to enter the cargo bay, Sarah felt Astra's consciousness brush against hers one last time. Your people, they call you human. This word, it means something special. It means we're complicated, Sarah thought back. Capable of great fear, but also great courage, of running away, but also of running toward those who need help, of changing, adapting, finding ways to bridge any gap, even quantum ones. Then I am honored to be the first Voidborn, to truly know humans. Sarah's last thought before passing out was that her grandmother would have been proud. Some traditions, like being the first to help, were worth keeping alive, even across the vastness of space itself. When she regained consciousness in the medical bay hours later, Director Harrison was waiting. The security teams were gone, replaced by a team of excited xenobiologists, and floating serenely nearby, a much healthier-looking Astra. The Voidborn High Council has made contact, Harrison said without preamble. They're interested in what happened here. Very interested. They're sending a delegation. He paused. They've never sent a delegation anywhere before. Sarah tried to sit up, but her head protested. Well, that's either very good or very bad. Both, probably. Harrison smiled slightly. Just like everything else humans get involved in. The council wants to know how you did it. How you managed to interface with Astra's quantum matrix without, well, having your brain turned to quantum soup. Simple. Sarah lay back down. I stopped seeing an alien energy being and started seeing a patient who needed help. The rest was just details. She closed her eyes. Very complicated, painful, probably going to revolutionize xenomedicine details, but still just details. Harrison shook his head. You know, when we started reaching for the stars, everyone worried about what we find out there. Turns out, maybe what we really needed to worry about was what we'd bring with us. He looked at Astra, then back to Sarah. Our stubborn refusal to accept limitations. Our inability to leave well enough alone. Our insistence on helping, even when it seems impossible. You mean our humanity. Exactly. He handed her a datapad. Now, about that research paper you mentioned. The council has some questions. About 1 million of them, actually. Sarah looked at Astra, who was now engaging in what appeared to be an animated discussion with 3 fascinated xenobiologists. The Voidborn's form was strong and bright again, shifting through beautiful patterns of light and energy. Well, she said, I guess we'd better start answering them. After all, the impossible is just something that hasn't been tried yet. And in that moment, in a medical bay on a station at the edge of human space, Another small but significant bridge was built between species, not through grand diplomatic gestures or technological breakthroughs, but through one person's simple decision to help, no matter the cost. It was, perhaps, the most human solution of all. The news of Sarah's breakthrough with Astra spread through the galactic scientific community like a quantum shockwave. Within days, Helios Station transformed from a quiet research outpost to the center of a diplomatic storm. Representatives from a dozen species converged on the station, each with their own agenda regarding the unprecedented human void-born interface. Sarah stood at the observation window of her lab, watching the latest diplomatic vessel dock. A crystalline ship belonging to the Meridian Consortium, a group of energy-based species who had long claimed exclusive understanding of void-born biology. Her neural implant still occasionally throbbed from the interface with Astra, but the pain was worth it. The data they'd gathered was revolutionary. They fear what this means. Astra's familiar resonance filled Sarah's mind. The Voidborn had insisted on staying at the station, officially as a patient under observation, but Sarah suspected their curiosity about humans played a larger role. The Meridians? Sarah turned to face her patient, and increasingly, friend. Astra's form shimmered with healthier patterns now, though Sarah could still detect subtle fluctuations that indicated their quantum matrix wasn't fully healed. All of them. Astra's form rippled with what Sarah had learned to recognize as concern. For millennia, the energy-based species have maintained their position through their unique ability to communicate with Voidborn. Now, a carbon-based life form has not only communicated with us, but found a way to heal us. It disrupts their understanding of the natural order. Sarah's reply was interrupted by her lab door sliding open. Director Harrison entered, followed by 3 Meridian representatives. Their energy forms were similar to Astra's but more rigid, constrained into humanoid shapes that Sarah found oddly artificial. Dr. Chen. The lead Meridian's translated voice carried carefully measured tones. I am first speaker lyrics. We have reviewed your intervention with the Voidborn specimen. Patient, Sarah corrected firmly. Astra is a patient, not a specimen. Lyrix's form flickered with what might have been irritation. Indeed, we have serious concerns about your methodology. The neural interface you attempted should have been fatal to both you and the patient. It violates every known principle of quantum biology. And yet, Sarah pulled up her research data with a gesture. It worked. More than worked, it's opened up entirely new possibilities for interspecies medical care. Look at these neural resonance patterns. There's a fundamental similarity in how consciousness manifests across different species, whether it's running on quantum states or biochemical processes. Impossible. Another Meridian interjected. Consciousness is not transferable between such radically different substrates. The risks were calculated, Sarah interrupted. Every breakthrough in medical history came with risks. When humans first performed heart transplants, everyone said the immune system would never accept foreign tissue. When we developed neural implants, they said interfacing technology directly with the brain would drive people mad. Being told something's impossible has never stopped humans from trying anyway. That first speaker Lyrix's form, pulsed with barely contained energy, is precisely what concerns us. Your species' tendency to ignore established limitations has already caused significant disruption to galactic society. And now you propose to interfere with matters far beyond your comprehension. Sarah felt her temper rising, but Director Harrison stepped in smoothly. Perhaps a demonstration would be more productive than debate. Dr. Chen, would you and Astra be willing to show our guests the interface process? Sarah glanced at Astra, who rippled in agreement. Of course. Though I should warn you, it's not exactly comfortable to watch. Human medical procedures rarely are. The next hour was a carefully choreographed dance of science and intuition. Sarah walked the Meridians through each step of the interface process, explaining how she had modified standard neural implant technology to create a bridge between human and voidborn consciousness. Astra participated eagerly, their form synchronizing with Sarah's neural patterns in a display that left even the skeptical Meridian speechless. The key, Sarah explained, fighting through the familiar headache that came with the interface, was stopping thinking in terms of barriers. We're not so different, really. All consciousness is essentially patterns, information organizing itself into awareness. Once you understand that, it's just a matter of finding the right translation protocol. But the energy requirements alone, one of the meridians began, are significant, Sarah acknowledged. Hence the pain. But humans have a long history of deciding some things are worth a little pain, or a lot of pain, in this case. You would risk your own neural integrity, Lyrics observed, for the sake of advancing medical knowledge. For the sake of helping someone who needed it, Sarah corrected. The advancement of medical knowledge was a bonus. The demonstration continued, but Sarah could see something shifting in the Meridian's attitude. Their rigid forms began to relax slightly, their energy patterns showing growing interest rather than mere skepticism. Finally, first speaker Lyrics raised a hand. Enough. We may have been hasty in our judgment, Dr. Chen. While your methods are unorthodox, dangerously so, by our standards, we cannot deny the results. The Meridian Consortium would be interested in further discussion of your techniques. Told you so, Director Harrison muttered under his breath, earning a sharp look from Sarah. There's one condition, Sarah said, disconnecting the interface carefully. This knowledge doesn't get locked away in some vault. If we're going to develop this technology further, it has to be available to everyone. Every species, every hospital, every medical facility that could use it to help people. That would be unprecedented, Lyrics protested. The political implications alone are exactly why it needs to happen. Sarah stood her ground. Look at what we've achieved here. A human and a voidborn working together to bridge a gap everyone said was unbridgeable. Imagine what else we could accomplish if we stopped letting fear of the unprecedented hold us back. Astra moved forward, their form aligning with Sarah's in a show of solidarity. My people have long held ourselves apart, believing our nature made true connection with other species impossible. We were wrong. Perhaps it is time for all of us to reconsider what we believe to be impossible. The lab fell silent as the Meridians conferred among themselves, their energy forms mixing in what Sarah assumed was their version of a private conversation. Finally, Lyrics turned back to them. The consortium will need time to consider your proposal. But they added, their form shifting to a more harmonious pattern. We are not opposed to discussion. Your achievement here cannot be ignored, however uncomfortable its implications may be. As the Meridians filed out, Director Harrison shook his head in amazement. You know, when I took this posting, I thought I was signing up for a quiet research station on the edge of space. Instead, I've got the center of a diplomatic revolution on my hands. Sarah watched Astra drift back to their customary spot near her research station. No revolution, Director. Just progress. One impossible thing at a time. And the next impossible thing. She smiled, pulling up her research notes. Now we figure out how to make the interface process safe for long-term use. After all, humans have another tradition. We don't stop at just proving something's possible. We keep pushing until we make it practical. As she began drafting protocols for the next phase of research, Sarah reflected that this, perhaps, was humanity's greatest strength. Not just our ability to break through barriers, but our determination to build bridges where those barriers once stood. The Meridians' visit had been just the beginning. The real work and the real changes were still to come. 3 weeks after the Meridian delegation's visit, Sarah found herself balanced between triumph and exhaustion. Her lab had become a crucible of innovation, where human determination met quantum mysteries. The interface technology was evolving rapidly, each breakthrough bringing new possibilities and new challenges. Neural pathway stable, Sarah announced, monitoring the holographic display of her latest test. She'd modified her original interface design, attempting to reduce the neural strain. quantum resonance holding at 87%. Astra's form pulsed with approval as they maintained the connection. The discomfort is significantly reduced. Your modifications are proving effective. Don't celebrate yet. Sarah adjusted a setting, watching the neural patterns shift. We still need to wait. She frowned at a new reading. That's interesting. Director Harrison, who had taken to attending their major tests, looked up from his datapad. Problem? Not exactly. Sarah enhanced the display, revealing intricate patterns of energy and consciousness interweaving between human and voidborn signatures. Look at this. The quantum states aren't just aligning anymore. They're synchronizing. It's like, she searched for the right words. It's like our consciousness is learning to speak each other's language. Impossible, came a new voice. Dr. Keller, the station's senior physicist, had arrived unnoticed. His face bore the disapproving expression Sarah had grown familiar with over the past weeks. Consciousness doesn't learn new substrates. The human brain simply isn't capable of processing quantum states. And yet, Sarah gestured at the readings. Here we are. The evidence is right in front of you, Marcus. Evidence of reckless experimentation, Keller countered. You're pushing these interfaces far beyond safe parameters. The potential for neural damage is being carefully monitored, Sarah interrupted. And the potential benefits far outweigh the risks. Imagine what this could mean for interspecies medicine, for communication, for understanding consciousness itself. Understanding. Keller laughed harshly. You're not seeking understanding. You're playing with forces you barely comprehend. The meridians were right. Some barriers exist for a reason. Astra's form shifted, their light dimming slightly. Your fear speaks to a larger truth, Dr. Keller. Many species resist change, preferring the comfort of known limitations. Yet it is precisely this resistance that my people now question. Watching humans, watching Sarah, challenge these supposed limitations has been enlightening. Enlightening. Keller's voice rose. You're talking about fundamentally altering human consciousness. We have no idea what the long-term effects might be. For all we know, these interfaces could be changing your neural patterns permanently. Dr. Chen. Sarah was about to respond when something unprecedented happened. The quantum resonance patterns on her display began to shift, forming new configurations she'd never seen before. At the same time, she felt a strange sensation in her mind, as if new pathways were opening. Sarah. Astra's voice held a note of wonder. Are you? I see it, she whispered. Through the interface, she wasn't just reading Astra's quantum states anymore. She was beginning to understand them intuitively, as if they were an extension of her own thoughts. It's like learning to see in a new spectrum of light. Director Harrison stepped forward, concerned. Dr. Chen, perhaps we should. No. Sarah held up a hand, concentrating on the new sensations. This is important. The interface isn't just translating anymore. It's adapting. Our minds are learning from each other. Keller moved toward the emergency shutdown controls. This is exactly what I was afraid of. We need to stop this before. Before what? Sarah challenged, never taking her eyes off the readings. Before we prove that consciousness isn't limited by biology. Before we demonstrate that different species can do more than just communicate, we can understand each other on the deepest possible level. Your readings are off the charts, Harrison warned, though he made no move to intervene. Whatever's happening is beautiful, Sarah completed. Through the interface, she could feel Astra's consciousness resonating with her own, creating patterns of thought and understanding that neither species had achieved alone. This isn't just about medical treatment anymore. This is about breaking down the fundamental barriers between species. Astra's form brightened, their energy patterns synchronizing more deeply with Sarah's neural activity. We are witnessing the birth of something new. A bridge not just between bodies, but between ways of being. The lab fell silent except for the soft hum of equipment. Even Keller seemed transfixed by the displays, which showed patterns of interaction that defied conventional physics. Finally, Sarah began the careful process of disconnecting the interface. As the quantum resonance faded, she turned to face her colleagues. What we just experienced, that's why we push boundaries. That's why we take risks. Every major advancement in human history came from someone deciding to step beyond what was considered safe or possible. The question remains, Keller said quietly, whether we're ready for this kind of advancement. The implications are exactly why we need to continue. Sarah finished. Think about it, Marcus. We're not just developing new medical technology. We're proving that consciousness itself is more adaptable, more universal than anyone imagined. The barriers between species aren't as absolute as we thought. Director Harrison cleared his throat. The Coalition Security Council will want a full report on this development, and I suspect our Meridian friends will be very interested in these new readings. Let them be interested. Sarah began organizing her data. But this information gets shared with everyone. No more secrets, no more artificial barriers between species. If we can bridge the gap between human and void-born consciousness, imagine what other connections are possible. As her colleagues filed out, Sarah felt Astra's consciousness brush against hers one last time, not through the interface, but through the new pathways they'd begun to forge. Your species, Astra observed, has a remarkable capacity for adaptation. Sarah smiled, reviewing the data from their breakthrough. That's the thing about humans, Astra. We don't just adapt. We help others adapt too. Sometimes all it takes is one person willing to reach across the void. Outside the lab's windows, the stars seemed to shine a little brighter, as if reflecting the new possibilities they'd uncovered. Sarah knew there would be resistance, fear, and probably more than a few attempts to shut down her research. But she also knew that once humans glimpsed a new frontier, there was no going back. The bridge between worlds had been built. Now it was time to help others cross it. The emergency meeting of the Galactic Council wasn't going well. Sarah watched from her designated observation area as representatives from 24 species argued about the implications of her research. The council chamber, a vast space station constructed specifically for interspecies diplomacy, hummed with tension. The humans have gone too far this time. The Meridian representative's energy form pulsed with agitation. This technology threatens the very foundation of species sovereignty. If consciousness can be shared across quantum states, what becomes of our distinct identities? Sarah felt Astra's presence beside her, their form dimmed to avoid drawing attention. In the weeks since their breakthrough, they'd refined their ability to communicate without the neural interface, though the connection wasn't nearly as deep. They fear change, Astra observed quietly. Yet they cannot stop what has already begun. The Arcanian delegate, a crystalline being known for their logical approach, raised an appendage. The potential benefits cannot be ignored. The medical applications alone could be catastrophic, interrupted the jury representative, their insectoid form vibrating with concern. We're talking about technology that allows direct consciousness interaction. The potential for abuse is precisely why we need to study it openly. Sarah stood, addressing the council. She hadn't planned to speak, but she couldn't remain silent any longer. Yes, this technology could be dangerous. So could fire, once upon a time. So could splitting the atom, or genetic engineering, or quantum computing. But hiding from progress never made anyone safer. The chamber fell silent. Even the most agitated delegates turned their attention to the lone human in their midst. What we discovered wasn't just a medical breakthrough. Sarah continued, gesturing to the holographic display of her research data. It's proof that consciousness itself transcends the barriers we've built between species. The neural patterns we recorded show that different forms of consciousness can learn to understand each other, to grow together. And that is precisely what concerns us. The Meridian speaker's voice carried across the chamber. Your species has a history of disrupting established orders, of pushing boundaries that exist for good reason. Sarah smiled. You say that like it's a bad thing. Yes, Humans push boundaries. We question limitations. We look at the impossible and ask why not. But we also share what we learn. We don't hoard knowledge. We spread it, because we understand that progress only matters if it benefits everyone. She pulled up new data, showing the refined interface designs. We've already developed safer protocols for the neural interface. The pain is minimal now, the risks greatly reduced. We're working on versions that could be adapted for different species' physiologies. Imagine a galaxy where no one has to suffer in isolation because their biology is too alien for others to help. The Arcanian delegate's crystalline form sparkled with interest. You would share this technology freely. With proper safeguards, yes. That's why I'm here, not just to defend our research, but to propose a collaborative effort. Let's establish an interspecies medical research initiative. Pool our knowledge, our resources, our different perspectives on consciousness itself. A murmur ran through the chamber. Sarah pressed her advantage. We've already proven it's possible for different forms of consciousness to interact safely, to learn from each other, to grow beyond their original limitations. The question isn't whether this technology will change things. It's whether we'll face those changes together or let fear drive us apart. Pretty words, the jury representative chittered. But humans always claim their intentions are benevolent. Yet somehow you end up at the center of every major disruption to galactic society. Because we're willing to take the first step, Sarah countered, to take the risks necessary for progress. But we're not asking anyone to follow us blindly. We're asking you to walk beside us, to help shape this new understanding of consciousness and connection. The council chamber erupted in debate. Sarah could see the divisions forming. Species aligned with progress on one side, those clinging to tradition on the other. But there were also the undecided, those watching and weighing the possibilities. Director Harrison, who had accompanied her to the council, leaned close. You realize you're basically proposing to revolutionize how every species in the galaxy thinks about consciousness. Someone has to. Sarah watched the ongoing debate. Besides, it's not just about consciousness anymore. It's about trust. About proving that different species can work together, grow together, become more than the sum of their parts. Astra's form brightened slightly. The council fears humans because you challenge their assumptions. Yet perhaps that is exactly what the galaxy needs, a species willing to question, to reach out, to believe in possibilities others dismiss. The debate continued for hours. Sarah presented more data, answered countless questions, defended her research against both legitimate concerns and paranoid fears. Finally, the council called for a vote on her proposal for an interspecies research initiative. The result was closer than she'd hoped, but it passed. Barely. Congratulations, Dr. Chen, the Arcanian delegate approached after the session. Though I suspect you've just made your life considerably more complicated. Sarah laughed. Complicated is what humans do best. But we also have a knack for bringing people together, for finding common ground even when it seems impossible. As they left the council chamber, Sarah could feel the weight of what they'd achieved. And what lay ahead. The real work was just beginning. They needed to establish protocols, build trust, prove that this technology could benefit all species equally. But looking at Astra, seeing the hope in their quantum patterns, she knew it was worth it. Humans hadn't reached the stars by playing it safe. They'd gotten there by daring to dream, by refusing to accept limitations, and by believing that the greatest achievements come not from standing apart, but from reaching out to others. The galaxy was changing. And once again, humanity was helping to light the way forward, not by force or domination, but by building bridges between worlds, one consciousness at a time. 1 year after the Galactic Council's historic vote, Sarah stood in the observation dome of the newly christened Convergence Institute. Below her, teams of researchers from dozens of species worked together in labs specifically designed to accommodate their various biological needs. The sight still took her breath away. Reflecting on your achievement, Astra's familiar presence materialized beside her. Their quantum form had grown stronger over the past year, showing subtle new patterns that reflected their continued work with human consciousness. Our achievement, Sarah corrected, touching the refined neural interface at her temple. The device was barely visible now, a testament to how far the technology had advanced. Though I'm not sure anyone expected it to grow this big, this fast. The Institute had started as a small research initiative, but had quickly evolved into something far more significant. Species that had never been able to communicate directly were now sharing thoughts and experiences through modified versions of the human void-born interface. Medical breakthroughs were happening almost weekly as different species learned to understand each other's biology at the deepest levels. Dr. Chen, a young researcher, Sarah thought his name was Patel, hurried up to them, practically bouncing with excitement. The crystalline meridian team just achieved stable consciousness synchronization. First time ever between solid-state and energy-based life forms. Sarah smiled, remembering her own breakthrough with Astra a year ago. Any complications? None. They used your latest protocols, the ones based on quantum harmonic resonance. The crystalline's lattice structure actually made the interface more stable than expected. We're already seeing applications for treating crystalline degenerative disorders. As Patel rushed off to spread the news, Sarah felt a familiar presence approaching. Director Harrison, now Administrator Harrison of the Convergence Institute, joined them at the window. "Remember when you said this would make a hell of a research paper?" he asked dryly. "I think we're well past that now." Sarah laughed. "Just a bit. Did you see the latest numbers from the medical outreach program? 217 successful cross-species treatments in the past month alone. Conditions that were considered untreatable a year ago." Harrison shook his head in wonder. "The jury representative who opposed us at the council, they just requested emergency interface technology for a colony dealing with a neural plague. Said it was the only way to understand the disease patterns in non-insectoid brains." Understanding. Astra's form pulsed thoughtfully. That is what humans truly brought to the galaxy. Not just technology, but the willingness to understand others, even when it seems impossible. Sarah watched a team of Arcanian crystalline beings working alongside meridian energy forms in one of the lower labs. A year ago, such cooperation would have been unthinkable. Now it was becoming commonplace. "We're receiving more applications for research positions than we can handle," Harrison continued. "Every major species has requested to join the program. Even the most conservative cultures can't ignore the results we're achieving here. Because we proved it's not about erasing differences," Sarah said. "It's about building bridges across them. Each species brings its own unique perspective, its own way of understanding consciousness and existence. Together, we're creating something entirely new." A soft chime interrupted them. The arrival of another transport ship. Sarah checked the manifest on her neural interface and felt her heart skip a beat. "The Voidborn High Council," she breathed. "They're actually coming." After a year of remote communication, the historically reclusive Voidborn leadership had finally decided to visit the Institute in person. Their ship, a construct of pure energy and quantum fields, docked with impossible grace. "They wish to understand," Astra explained, their form brightening with pride, "why so many of our young ones are choosing to study here. Why we are suddenly so eager to connect with other species after eons of isolation." The Welcome Center hummed with activity as final preparations were made for the historic meeting. Sarah found herself thinking about that first desperate moment in the cargo bay, when she decided to help an alien that everyone else had fled from. "You know," Harrison mused, "when humans first reached the stars, everyone worried we'd bring our wars, our conflicts, our divisions. Instead, we brought something else. Our stubborn refusal to accept barriers between people, no matter what form those people might take. We brought hope," Sarah added softly. "The hope that different beings can understand each other, help each other, grow together." As the Voidborn delegation emerged from their ship, their forms more magnificent and complex than any Sarah had seen before, She felt Astra's consciousness brush against hers through their refined interface. "Your people have a saying," Astra observed. "To boldly go." We always thought it referred to physical exploration. Now we understand. You go boldly into new ways of thinking, of connecting, of being. You help others find the courage to do the same. Sarah watched as species that had once been divided by fear and mistrust gathered to welcome the Voidborn leaders. In the labs below, breakthroughs continued, boundaries fell, and new connections formed between minds that had once seemed incompatible. That's the real legacy here, she realized. Not just the technology or the medical advances, but the proof that differences don't have to divide us. That consciousness, in all its forms, can find ways to connect, to understand, to grow. The Voidborn High Council approach, their forms radiating curiosity and something rare for their species, hope. Sarah straightened, ready to help forge another connection, to build another bridge between worlds. Because that's what humans did best, not conquering the impossible, but finding ways to make it possible, one small step at a time. And in doing so, they helped the rest of the galaxy learn to do the same. In the end, that was humanity's greatest gift to the stars. Not the technology to connect different forms of consciousness, but the simple, stubborn belief that such connections were worth making in the first place. The future stretched out before them, bright with possibilities, as species that had once stood apart learned to stand together, their differences becoming not barriers but bridges to understanding. And at the heart of it all was the uniquely human conviction that had started everything. The belief that somewhere, somehow, there's always a way to help, to heal, to connect. All it takes is the courage to try.